Live, the first sitting of the House for 2020. The opposition dives into the recent scandal plaguing the government involving Lev Derman and 2 special audits revealing fraud. The Prime Minister says he will call on Consul General Herman Longsword, who is named in the Sports Council audit. At the Julian Cho High School, more than $2.2 million in questionable contracts are given to teachers. DPM Patrick Faber has a take on the recent scandals involving his ministry. Mark Tuyul Jr. is laid to rest, and the Civil Aviation Department signs an agreement to acquire a $12 million radar. Details of these stories and more coming up in tonight's newscast.
In light
Welcome to News 5 Live for Friday, January 17th. I am Marlene Cuellar. The inaugural sitting of the House of Representatives for the new year 2020 got underway this morning in Belmopan amid a number of scandals racking the Barrow administration. While several bills were tabled for readings in Parliament, The gist of today's House meeting was reserved for the adjournment where the opposition People's United Party went in on government for the Lev Derman affair, as well as the National Sports Council and Juliancha Technical High School audits. PUP leader John Briceño wasted no time going in on the Lev Derman scandal, which purportedly involves 2 UDP government ministers receiving bribes from the imprisoned Armenian-American businessman dating back to 2013. Like he did in the press conference on Wednesday morning, Briceño once again demands the names of those accused ministers who are yet to be called out in a pending testimony in the Utah courts. Aside from that issue, the opposition leader also broached the issue of corruption within the Immigration Department dating back to Wong Hon Kim and the Penner scandal.
It was not the PUP that broke the story about Lev Termandi. I hope I get it right, because you get all kind of strange names right on from immigration, or whatever his real name may be. It was actually the media that broke this story. This story is now public. Now, what is really important and what Belizeans are really interested is that they want to know who are the 2 unnamed ministers that are accused of bribery that belong to the UDP cabinet. Who are these UDP ministers, or who are the UDP officials that have been mentioned, Mr. Speaker? What Belizeans want to know is the massive corruption that was and could possibly still be happening in the Department of Immigration. What Belizeans want to know is about the kinds of associations that UDP ministers have been or are having with characters who have been locked up or are being accused of criminal activities. Characters like the famous Wong Hon Kim, remember him? And Puki from the infamous Sanctuary Bay scandal. Now we yet have another scandal where the issue of bribes and kickbacks appear in court documents. This is not hearsay or hearsay. This information is coming from evidence to be presented in U.S. courts. Now, Mr. Speaker, in his press conference, the Prime Minister said that he always acts in the face of these issues. I'm happy to hear that he announced today that Herman Langsworth, who is not honorary, is our Consul General in New York, fat salary, living quite well in New York, that he is going to call him in so that Mr. Langsworth can explain these over $100,000+ that was set in the
point of
report.
order.
Belizeans are well aware, Mr. Speaker, that we have ministers and government officials who are not only associating openly with murderers and criminals like Danny Mason and Lev or Levon Termedi, and please forgive me if I mispronounce the words, but they are directly involved in this scandalous and corrupt behavior with utter impunity because they suffer no risk of criminal prosecution or sanctions in Belize under the leadership of this hypocritical UDP government.
In attempting to defend his position, PM Barrow reiterated what was said at his press conference on Wednesday, that essentially he is hamstrung until and unless names and credible evidence are presented during the upcoming trial involving Lev Derman in Utah. He once again emphasized that whomever are the guilty parties will be fired from cabinet.
That matter with respect to the proceedings in the U.S. involves unnamed ministers, allegations against unnamed ministers. I made the point that The allegations are that one minister was getting monthly contributions from this levon, and another minister got monies by way of a wire transfer. No names have been called, but the trial is soon to commence, and presumably, once that trial is commenced, the evidence that the prosecutor currently tells the judge he is prepared to lead will be led, and I repeat that the names clearly will come out, and the evidence to prove that they were recipients of money for a corrupt purpose will be forthcoming. If or when that happens, I say to you, sir, and to all members of this House, and to the nation, anybody, any minister that is found indeed to have been complicit in any corrupt act and to have received money for purposes of a bribe will be fired by your humble servant. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The issue of Belizean nationalities being hurriedly granted to questionable characters was also a hallmark in the opposition leader's statements on adjournment. Quite a number of Canadian and American nationals who received their Belizean passports under rush in 2013 turned out to have either been arrested, convicted, or wanted for their respective roles in criminal activities. The granddaddy of them all is Canadian national Philip Thomas Kirby, who is said to have been involved in a $6 billion securities fraud in his home country.
Maxim Poon Wong, a Canadian citizen, was granted nationality on the 30th of May 2013. He received his Belizean passport on the 26th June 2013. Maxim Wong is alleged to be connected to the Yellow Triangle Boys criminal gang out of Canada. Wong has been accused of drug trafficking and money laundering. One simple Google search, you know. Simple Google search. You have John Joseph Hurry. What is this man in a hurry for true? He's an American who was granted his nationality certificate on the 10th June 2013. Is that when I mean, hurry, you know, the 2,000 plus people who get nationalities just before the election? Right. John Hurry was arrested and charged for fraud. Philip Thomas Kerber. I mean, I believe we hear about Barrow and Musa and Vega and, you know, Leiva, you know, Briseño. Yes. You are your turn, you are out of the jail. So, Philip Thomas Kirby, a Canadian national, was granted Belizean nationality on the 10th of June 2013. He got his Belizean passport on 17th August 2013. Cooper is noted to be involved, now listen to this one. Left the play, you know, Libo against this one. He is noted to be involved in a $6 billion securities fraud. $6 billion. Boy, you got some nervous people across the next side.
An audit of the National Sports Council for a one-year period showed the blatant disregard for government financial regulations and suspected fraud of huge sums of money. The audit was tabled today in the House of Representatives, and so was the Julian Cho High School special audit. In this case, acting on a complaint from a whistleblower, the Accountant General covered the period April 2014 to September 2016, uncovering that more than a whopping $2.2 million were issued in contracts, largely to teachers, which did not comply with the Finance and Audit Reform Act. A number of items were also purchased without approval from the Ministry of Education in a period when Simeon Koch, the UDP standard bearer for Toledo West, was the principal. That particular high school has been in the news constantly because the board has not agreed on a principal. Here is News 5's Hipólito Novello with this report.
The Auditor General's report on Julian Cho Technical High School for the period April 2014 to September 2016 is 92 pages. It was presented to Prime Minister Dean Barrow on October 23, 2019, so one can assume that the Minister of Finance was aware that contracts for works issued by the administration of the high school totaling more than $2.2 million did not comply with the Finance and Audit Reform Act. According to the report, in some instances, numerous contracts were awarded to staff members of the institution. It says that vehicles and computers were purchased without the ministry's approval. A further look at the audit reveals that for the period in revision, $2,230,000 were incurred in capital works, services, and equipment for the high school. The contracts, which were not tendered, were issued to teachers employed at the institution. The majority of the contracts were not drawn up. Contracts awarded were never submitted to the Contractor General. Principal Dr. Simon Koch, the UDP standard bearer for Toledo West, was interviewed about the contracts. He said that he was not aware of the requirements for contracts. Contracts to the tunes of tens of thousands of dollars were issued for classroom buildings to teachers. Table B shows a list of teachers who received contracts without vetting of the Contractor General. Raymond Coleman received 2 contracts totaling $123,000 for the construction of a student center and a classroom. Francisco Recinos received more than $700,000 for the 6th classroom project. Terman Salgado received $44,000, Oliver Garay received a total of $62,000, and Regina Hernandez received $20,000. Then there are the works contracted for which contracts were not drawn or vetted by the Contractor General. The list contains 12 names. Francisco Recinos received a total of $125,000. Regina Hernandez received more than $50,000. Franz Wheeler received $106,000 for roadway construction. Harold Usher received $65,000. Jesus H. received $26,000. And Peter Fer received $29,000 for infrastructure works at the school. Tens of thousands of dollars in contracts were awarded without certification. Payment vouchers were signed by Principal Cho, approving the disbursements of funds. According to the audit, Francisco Recinos received a total of $1.1 million for works at the school. The works were poorly done. In classroom 6, the roof leaks. The vice principal, Vincent Lopez, received $12,000 for IT supplies, and Derek Borland received $104,000 for IT supplies and services. Vehicle and computers were purchased without the approval of the Ministry of Finance. Software installed on the computers included violent games such as Need for Speed, Halo, and Delta Force. Fuel totaling almost $60,000 was purchased over 2 years without the particulars of vehicle registration numbers. Teachers were given advances in salary without proper documentation. The audit also shows that 3 cell phones for Principal Koch and 2 vice principals were purchased at a cost of $12,000 each. Under the administration of Koch, the audit revealed a significant unaccounted expenditure of more than $2 million. Reporting for News 5, Hipólito Novello.
Area Representative for Toledo West, Oscar Requena, spoke on the audit's findings on the adjournment of the House. As a matter of national importance, Requena called for action and highlighted the fact that the discrepancies occurred under the watch of his political opponent, Dr. Simeon Koch, who is the former principal and current UDP standard bearer for Toledo West.
Over $2.3 million awarded to teachers and other cronies who are associated with the school under the watch of Simeon Koch, who is now Prime Minister, your political candidate in Toledo West. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a serious issue. The Ministry of Education officials have been fully aware of what has been going on from 2015. And in fact, they had a meeting in early 2015. They got to scold the board, and business continued as usual. makes me wonder what in the world is going on. Mr. Speaker, who appointed the board? The Ministry of Education? Mr. Speaker, fuel. Thousands of dollars, $54,000 spent in fuel. So, Prime Minister, this is the matter that is, and of course, all happening under your political candidate, Dr. Simeon Koch. Goes further, Prime Minister, this one is going to be of interest to you. There are allegations, and this matter has to be investigated, that, you know, the signatories to the school account, normally, you know, the requirement is that you're going to have 3 people signing on a school account. Well, you know, they had no regard for the Audit and Finance Reform Act, no regard for financial orders and so on. And you know what they were doing? One person was signing only, the former principal, Simeon Koch. But let me tell you, it goes further. You know what they did? This is how they cooked up the goose. My understanding, and it has to be investigated, that there was a special stamp made for the center manager. A special stamp, just stamp, and then the principal signs, and the payments are processed. This is a serious matter. This is what people are telling you. This is what parents are complaining about. If you think this is bad, my understanding is that the Auditor General's report is up to 2016. But I want to know, parents want to know what happened in 2017, what happened in 2018, leading up to the convention in which your candidate, Simeon Koch, ran for convention in November the 4th, 2018. Parents want to know that what happened at the school. Because I can tell you, from all indications, Mr. Speaker, money made a role indeed.
Was the timing of the Auditor General's reports on the National Sports Council and Hooliancha Technical High School designed to undermine the Deputy Prime Minister, whose portfolios as Minister of Education, Youth and Sports includes those 2 institutions as he heads to the Leadership Convention? It's a question that was bluntly put to the Deputy Prime Minister when he exited the Assembly building this afternoon. While he was circumspect in responding to the Hooliancha matter, which involves former principal turned Toledo West UDP standard-bearer Simeon Koch, he chose not to respond to the timing of the audit report's release.
That is one that I have not really delved into in any great detail, but from what I'm advised, it is not the kind of thing that people purport it to be, and so I will reserve my comments and come back at a later time to speak about that. Evidently, the people who wanted to raise it in the House this afternoon or this morning, they have an agenda, and clearly our colleague from, Toledo West, clearly has an agenda, because this is the man who, of course, is now his opponent and who is giving him a rocky time to be re-elected. So he will try to stir the mud and make things seem as bad as they can be. But I can assure people that certainly from what I have been privy to, that it's not that kind of mess that he would want you to believe and the opposition would want you to believe.
Well, the Auditor General report points to a fairly big mess at that school,
Jules,
sir.
as I said, I will reserve my comments.
Sir, would you speak about the timing of the release of these documents? The audits, yes, they are tabled, but they could have been tabled. We had, I heard they were on the PM's desk from late last year. We had treehouse meetings since then. Do you think that the timing is calculated to undermine you?
But either way, you would have a criticism for the PM. If he released it now, or if he took another couple of months to release it, then the criticism would be, why is he sitting on this?
In respect of the damning audit of the National Sports Council, in a memorandum dated February 28, 2019, Director Ian Jones reacted with an 85 pages of memorandum. The majority of pages are full of procedural information, job descriptions, and the entire handbook. As we have been reporting, the Auditor General's team found massive fraud and corruption within the Sports Council and questionable and suspicious financial transactions for the period April 2015 to March 2016. The audit report details specific instances where checks were cashed and monies handed to the former director, Patrick Henry. Henry's name appears several times as having received tens of thousands of dollars in cash and making several requests from the Ministry of Sports for projects costing tens of thousands of dollars. These projects were never carried out, but the monies were spent. In fact, in some cases, the bank used the deposits to cover unauthorized bank overdrafts. There is the case of Herman Longsworth. He is currently the Consul General for Belize in New York. He was the area representative for Albert and the Minister of State and the Ministry of Sports. According to the audit report, he set up Go Enterprises Limited and managed to push the company to receive monies without contracts for works at Marion Jones Sporting Complex. Some of the monies were deposited in his personal account and the account of the UDP Albert Division. Emer Hernandez, the UDP's favorite contractor, received more than $100,000 for works at Marion Jones. Again, no contract was entered. Then there is the embezzlement case for almost $500,000 by, according to the report, Ivan Ayuso, as senior accounts clerk. These are only some of the apparent fraud cases. The council's memo doesn't respond to any specific allegation, and current Director Jones says he did not discover any instances of fraud, but he says that he did discover, quote, loopholes within the payroll system and other accounting practices that could allow for fraud to occur, unquote. He goes on to say that the council will deliver on its mandate, having been, quote, robbed as a result of mismanagement of the NSC, the sports fund, and obvious fraudulent activities discovered, unquote. Jones has written to the director of the Financial Intelligence Unit to seek reprimand for those who are allegedly responsible for the misappropriation of public funds through fraudulent activities at the National Sports Council. Checks and balances have been put in place to prevent further fraud and corruption. Deputy Prime Minister Faber says he was the one who commissioned an audit of the National Sports Council when both previous junior ministers demitted office. Those ministers of state also included Herman Longsworth, who has now taken up an appointment as Consul General in New York. The audit report indicates that he too was involved in questionable cash transactions. While he will be called in by the Prime Minister to answer to those charges, Commissioner of Police Chester Williams will also be tasked to investigate any criminal wrongdoing in respect of the findings of the Auditor General.
The audit of the National Sports Council was commissioned by myself and my ministry. When it was that we lost our ministers of state, because as you know, the ministry, I think, was put under my care maybe 2012, after the 2012 elections, and we always had a Minister of State who assumed the responsibilities of the portfolios of youth and sports, and then eventually youth, sports and culture. So when it was that I was the minister with direct guidance over the Sports Council, that was when I commissioned the Auditor General, I asked the Auditor General to come and to do the audit. So I want to make that very clear. And there are findings in there that, of course, will be discussed now that it is tabled here in the House of Representatives, and it will go to the Public Accounts Committee, and those matters will be discussed. But you know that in response to the Auditor General's position, and this is one of those rare cases when, in fact, they allowed for us to make a response to the findings. Certainly you saw an instance in there when I was told that one of the directors indicated that they had given me $5,000 that
Indeed.
was for some education program,
school program,
which is a back to school program or something, which is ridiculous because
the check was written in November, sir,
and the check, well, see,
before election.
I don't know, and that check was cashed, and then the cash was given. No, I'm not into that kind of thing. Everybody knows that. And in fact, if we wanted to do some kind of back to school initiative, that would have come.
But Mr. Henry
via
says he gave you the money.
But I'm telling you, as is in the report, because we were given a chance. In fact, the auditors visited with me prior to writing up the report and asked me what was my position, and that position is reflected, as I said to you yesterday, Jules Vasquez, in the report itself. So that is my position as it relates to that. One little portion that, in fact, directly involved me, but at that time, I'm sure that all know that, in fact, while I was the substantive minister, a minister of state presided over the affairs of the National Sports Council.
And that Minister of State has also been implicated in significant wrongdoing of the suggestion is breaking the Prevention of Corruption in Public Life Act, going against that.
And you've heard the Prime Minister's position on that he will in fact be speaking to the former Minister of State, and then of course the matter will be properly ventilated in the Public Accounts Committee should the chairman ever get to the point where he will call a meeting.
Coming up, the 3-year-old boy who was killed allegedly by his stepfather is laid to rest. And we'll have more from the House. This afternoon, an adjournment in the House, Caribbean Shores Area Rep. Karim Musa also weighed in on the Lev Derman scandal, stating that because it is a federal case before the U.S. courts, the names of the two accused ministers have already been disclosed. He, too, is calling for the names to be made public locally.
This scandal that has surfaced regarding Lev Derban, I mean, there's a lot. There's Danny Mason, there's a lot. But in relation to the particular scandal that has surfaced, I would want to say that your duty as the Prime Minister and the head of state is to contact the Charge d'Affaires of the U.S. Embassy. I think you need to contact him. I think you need to contact the State Department because, as you and I know, in a criminal trial, which is the case that Mr. Derban is going through in the U.S., there is a disclosure. And so the names have already been called, whether it is that it's sealed in some affidavit, what have you, the names are already out there. And so the Prime Minister owes a duty to this nation. Let's not wait for the trial to happen because the names are out there. So we need to, at least, Prime Minister, employ your best effort to get that information. If I could call, I would have called, but they're not giving me that information. But as the Prime Minister and a serious situation like this, I'm sure that they would give you that information. And also, Mr. Prime Minister, your duty to preserve the sanctity and integrity of the office of Prime Minister. Again, it is something very important, and it's not something that we should take lightly, that we just hand it over to any of these two individuals, because I believe that that would be a massive mistake. And then, on a final note, in terms of your duty that I see, Mr. Prime Minister, and if I may just share a running joke in Caribbean Shores, because I was campaigning last night, and they said, yeah, I have to start because the thing could be any minute now. When I was campaigning, one of my constituents said that he got intelligence from inside the cabinet room when you were going around and asking each and every one of the cabinet members, did you receive 25,000 US from Lev Derban? And each of them said no, as you said. But one of the ministers turned to another and said, family, but the public, they kind of said that you are the one we get it, you know, how you just tell a man no? He responded, the minister responded and said, I know they lie, you know. I said no, because I did not get 25,000 US. I get 27,000 US. It's just to say, Mr. Prime Minister, that there's been a lot of play with technicalities, so we have to be very clear when we come to the Belizean people. We have to be very clear with the line of questioning, because some of the guys are bush liar. So you have to ask them point blank, you get any money for this man? So you can't just put it 25,000 US, because they might say, well, I get conversion rate, I get 24,800.
And while he may not have been close to Lev Derman, Deputy Prime Minister was asked once again about his involvement with convicted murderer William Danny Mason. You will recall that upon defeating John Saldivar to become Deputy Party Leader of the UDP several years ago, Faber visited Mason's Intelco Hill residence, where he had a victory party or congratulatory drinks with Mason. But did he receive any campaign monies from the incarcerated businessman?
No, you keep on raising this topic, and I will say this, that it is stirred by an inter-party interest. Let me leave that alone.
But you're prepared to.
I have said categorically to you, yeah. I've said that I've told this nation from the onset what my very limited exposure to Mr. Mason was. I think everybody in the country knows that. But I was in no way connected with him. He has never been a financier.
You went to his house to have a celebration party after you got
and that is exactly what I said I declared. So why are you pretending like I'm just hiding that or something? I'm saying to you, sir, that I have never received any campaign financing, any amount from Mr. Mason. And I hope that that is the end of that.
Minister of National Security John Saldivar was not present in the House this afternoon when Cayo South Area Rep Julius Espat took square aim at him for his open affiliation with nefarious figures who have since been imprisoned. Those persons include William Danny Mason and now Lev Derman. In referring to the Security Ministers Associations, Espat used an old Spanish adage that he says was taught to him by his grandmother. He also goes on to say that specific crimes, including the landing of drug planes, have increased under the current Minister of National Security.
Mr. Speaker, my grandmother used to say, dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres. And that comes to mind when I reflect on the honorable member from Belmopan, who is the Minister of National Security. It roughly translates, tell me who your friends are, and I will tell you who you are. There's another phrase, Mr. Speaker. Birds of a feather flock together. Mr. Speaker, every time somebody that is corrupt comes into the Belizean national TV scene, it is always a person that is friendly to the Minister of National Security. They eat together, they play together, they fly together. I wouldn't want to talk about the sleep together, I don't know about that one. They do everything together, and then all of a sudden, and every single time, the response is, I don't know. I see you're smiling, Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, statistics show that there are more types of crime committed under the watch of this Minister of National Security and Home Affairs. Statistics show that. Mr. Speaker, there are definitely much more drug planes landing under his watch. Statistics show that.
During today's House meeting, the Prime Minister also announced that he had identified the new Contractor General. He is architect Omar Mitchell, and we will have more from the House on Monday's newscast. Late this afternoon, the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry acknowledged that at 3:25 p.m., it received 2 packages addressed to the President containing the procurement and contract documents for the Coastal Highway Upgrading Project, which were granted to Emer Hernandez and worth $130 million. The BCCI says it will review the documents. The BCCI had requested copies of all the documents, including the bidding process. It was an emotional day today for the family of Mark Tuyul Jr., who was laid to rest this afternoon at the Eternal Garden Cemetery at Mile 13 on the George Price Highway. The 3-year-old was sexually assaulted and murdered, allegedly by his stepfather, Kenrick Longsworth, exactly 1 week ago at his house in an area referred to as Jungle on Northside Belize City. His 2 siblings were also injured in the horrific ordeal, but survived. Longsworth was arraigned and remanded to prison earlier this week. The funeral service was held at the Mount Zion Seventh-day Adventist Church in Belize City, where relatives and friends gathered to bid their farewell to the toddler, including his mother, Zima Castillo. Joined by her co-workers, officers attached to the Belize Department of Transport assisted with placing the casket into the hearse before the body of Tuyul Jr. was carted off to its final place of rest. And back to the issue of the audit of the National Sports Council, the Belize Youth Movement is expressing outrage at the fleecing of public funds at the National Sports Council by ex-ministers and cronies of the government. It notes that in a single year, according to an audit, close to $1 million was not spent on athletes but by a few select individuals. The BYM states that the Auditor General's report revealed that when athletes were to be given approximately $50 stipend per week when traveling overseas, persons such as Ivan Ayuso ended up with more than $400,000 in their bank accounts. The BYM is calling on those involved to be dealt with swiftly and to the fullest extent of the law. It also demands that criminal charges be brought upon those who've been called in the Auditor General's report for wrongdoing. After the break, fiery consultations on the Equal Opportunities Bill take place in Belize City. The illegal airplane landings have increased in recent years, and civil aviation and security authorities believe that a new radar system will help to crack down or at least track these previously undetected planes once they're within Belize's airspace. The $12 million primary radar system will boost the way civil aviation manages air navigation, while it helps to keep registered aircraft and passengers safe. Today, Civil Aviation signed the agreement with COSESNA and Indra. News 5 is there, and here's the story.
In a few months' time, it will be a lot more difficult for illegal plane landings and other illicit activities carried out by way of Belize's airspace to go undetected. That's because today the Civil Aviation Department signed an agreement for Belize to get a primary radar, which will be installed between August and September of this year. This radar, according to Director of Civil Aviation Lindsay Garbut, will provide critical surveillance and support to Belize's airspace, including getting airplanes safely to and from their destinations. Right now, the department is using only a secondary radar, but with the addition of the primary one, the department will now connect to the rest of Central America for airspace support and data.
It provides a more consistent and secure surveillance of the Belizean airspace. It also allows us to have more safety for our pilots and the airplane and the more than 200,000 movements that we have per year in our airspace. Allows us to be able to guide them around weather conditions, something that the secondary radar does not provide. Now we have two radars. If one goes down, the other one is up, so we can always provide the kind of coverage that we need. It allows us to interconnect with the rest of Central America. So if one of their radar goes down, we can provide support and vice versa. We are on the level of the rest of the world. This is the cutting edge, and that is what the partnership with Indra provides us. The equipment that we have are as good as you find anywhere in the aviation world.
The $12 million radar was to be obtained until 2022, but according to Garbut, it's here 2 years earlier because they've lobbied and regional partners at COSESNA responded with the support of Indra.
$12 million is not something you just find standing up and you don't just pull it out of your pocket. COSESNA's primary responsibility is to provide aviation service, which is generally provided by a secondary radar. Being a member of COSESNA and recognizing the total importance of going beyond just the needs of aviation, but looking at the national security interests, we were able to successfully negotiate the provision of a primary radar, going beyond just the aviation needs of Belize.
And going beyond the aviation needs is a critical element that has been missing for Belize to tackle the increasing landings of illicit aircrafts. These aircrafts that don't want to be detected can elude the secondary radar system by turning off a piece of equipment called a transponder. But in a few months' time, those uninvited aircrafts will not be able to go undetected as long as they're within the space of operations of this primary radar.
It's a welcome asset for national security because in the past we've had just a secondary radar which was able to pick up the aircrafts that comes into Belize that would have their transponder on. Now, for particular aircraft that doesn't come in and would do illicit things like drug trafficking, they more than often would not have their transponder on, and we would not be able to pick them up with the secondary radar. Now with the primary radar, even if that is turned off, we'll be able to pick them up. So that information now is going to be shared with our Joint Intelligence and Operations Center. So they'll be able to have real-time information in regards to all aircraft that are coming into the country.
And the information received on this high-tech primary radar system will be shared in real time with law enforcement authorities. But having the information and being able to respond will require security forces to be resourced and coordinated.
They'll get a feed from here. It will be sent direct. So the Joint Intelligence and Operations Center will have the view that our air traffic controllers are seeing right in their center. So based on the information they're receiving, they'll be able to react on it immediately if they wish. That now will be a matter for the Police Defense Force and the Police Department, who will be working jointly together with our assistance if needs be. It will depend on their resources and their tactics, techniques, procedures in regards to trying to interdict anything illicit that is coming in, because they'll be able to see real time the legal aircraft and possibly illicit aircraft as well. So the country is huge. Dependent on the resources and their ability to maximize use of their resources, they'll be able to better now interdict what is coming in illicitly.
Reporting for News 5, I'm Andrea Polanco.
On Thursday night, the Ministry of Human Development and National AIDS Commission held a public consultation in Belize City as a part of its community outreach to get feedback on the Equal Opportunities Bill. The 75-page document, which seeks to address issues resulting from close to 20 different forms of discrimination, was developed following extensive planning and meetings with input from representatives of government, the opposition, social and civil organization partners, and other groups. Now they have taken the bill on the road for the public to ask questions and sound off on the contents. Close to 200+ persons showed up for the consultation in Belize City. Proponents of the bill, including CEO Judith Alpuche and 2 attorneys, presented before the question and answer segment. Here's a snippet of those presentations.
This at the core is really about leveling the playing field. It is about fairness. At the core, our Constitution talks about fairness. It is about equality and equity. It's about how do we see the merits of every human being, not blinded by characteristics that we might not agree with or we feel uncomfortable with. And so how is it that in a multi-ethnic, multi-plural democracy where we all have to live together, where everybody has an equal right to live, how can we do that together? How can we ensure respect for all?
Legislation is that it prohibits screening for HIV in employment and education unless, of course, it is based upon public safety. So we can see what is the trickling effect. If a person is infected with HIV and they have to go to employment and present that information, and it doesn't have anything to do with their job, and they don't pose a risk for any of the other employees, that person shouldn't have to provide that information, because then they might be discriminated and not allowed employment, which trickles down to that person not being able to provide for their family, leads somebody into poverty. Same with education. You shouldn't have to provide your HIV results to be able to admit it into a school because you're refusing an individual the opportunity to gain an education, which again we know, if you have your education, you're able to then gain gainful employment. It also deals with a duty of confidentiality that are placed on healthcare providers. So we live in a small community, and we know sometimes somebody can go to a healthcare provider, take an HIV test, and before that person leaves, that information has been shared with somebody else without that person's consent. And so this legislation places a restriction on individual and prohibits individual from sharing your HIV result without that person's consent. And it creates a sanction if that is done.
I've seen a concern that this legislation is about regulating parental choices. It does not. The legislation does not affect your ability to engage with your children, to have your relationships, to tell them what is right and wrong, and to lead them according to your own convictions, your own sense of morality, and according to your principles. And so I've seen that as an area of concern. What are the areas of public life that are covered in this bill? Employment, whether full-time, part-time, seasonal. The legislation looks at a holistic definition of employment in the provision of goods and services, whether that is in banking facilities, insurance, healthcare, recreation, goods and services, in the sale of goods. The legislation provides broad protection.
So following those three presentations, as well as remarks from Enrique Romero, Executive Director of the National AIDS Commission, the public had the opportunity to make comments and give feedback on the Equal Opportunities Bill. There was a mixed crowd, with support from the bill coming from a wide cross-section of society. Here's a few of the comments in support of the bill.
While a lot of us are privileged to be here, some LGBT people cannot even get out of their house because they face violence and hate in their neighborhoods. LGBT people that get laughed at by authorities and even violated and hurt by authorities and have no redress at all. LGBT that have been killed just for being who they are and not messing with anyone and nobody. You know, and even people living with HIV that face hate on a daily basis. So yes, I agree with this law because it's not too much to ask as Belizean citizens to have some protection under the law for our own country.
I'm a Catholic. I pray every night, I pray every morning for the country of Belize. But 15% of our population is non-religious, and about 11% as of 2000 doesn't identify as Christian. And that's okay. So for those in our country, and that number may have risen, we're doing another census, for those in our country who don't identify as Christian, we can't expect to hold them up to the same principles we hold up to ourselves. We have to just treat everybody with respect. Yeah. So I am in full support of this bill. Thank you all very much for laying out your arguments clearly and speaking from reason instead of fear. And I pray to God that everybody's hearts can be open so that we don't speak from fear anymore.
There's a part in the Catechism of the Catholic Church that speaks to wanting to basically, if you could control legislation, that's a plus. And that is something scary for me as a gay man. The point that I want to make is that for everything that I heard, hold on, let me finish. let me finish. Everything that I heard tonight in regard to the legislation protects every Christian, every Muslim, every Buddhist to believe what they want. You have the freedom of religion, but I also have the freedom from religion.
A lot of what I'm hearing is people agreeing to allow the LGBTQ to not be a part of this bill. And most of what they are saying is about Christianity and God, about marriages between the LGBTQ. But what they are missing is what the LGBTQ will be excluded from, other than things correlating with Christianity. By excluding them from the bill, you are allowing them to be excluded from jobs, from rights they are born to have as human beings, as civilians. As civilians. You will be discriminating against them, and as Christian it is wrong to discriminate because it's judging others. And as far as I know, God is the only one that can judge.
And while there was support for the bill, there was a group of independent persons who wanted clarity on some of the points. There were some who didn't support the bill. Many of them offered comments identified as Christians and or members of a certain religious group. Most of their contention centered on elements of the bill that looked at discrimination against LGBT persons and HIV/AIDS discrimination. Towards the end of the presentations, a large number of those persons who disagreed with the bill walked out. Here's a snippet of some of those candid moments.
It seems that this bill is a general bill about AIDS treatment and HIV treatment, and I thought we had a Public and Health Services Commission to take care of these things for us. These things are already in place in the laws of Belize, I believe. My next point is this. As a male, as a man in this country, as a father, I want to tell my children the truth. I don't want to lie to them. And you said, brother, and I agree with you, as a Christian, and we are a Christian nation, by the way. We are a Christian nation, by the way. We are a Christian nation, by the way. Excuse me. Thank you, Jesus.
The confidentiality of HIV, do you not think that that is spreading the HIV more?
Okay.
A sex worker. How is being a sex worker being productive to society? We should allow our people to express their dreams. Everybody has dreams. Okay. But a sex worker is not one of them. It is not a profession. And we all know that this is a vehicle to promote the homosexual and the LGBT community. It's not about AIDS, it's not about disability, it's about them. It's not about us.
As a regular Belizean, I'm kind of disappointed that this bill had to have a Unabom element to it, but I believe if that element would be removed from the bill, then you guys, then more Belize, then we can really have that necessary conversation to move the country forward.
I represent the church. And I believe that this bill would discriminate against the church. We have our belief. And I will not sit here while LGBTQ, LMNOP, whatever, tells us that we cannot follow our God and all the principles in the Bible. You are discriminating against our belief. We believe in Jesus and we believe in the order of marriage. God said one man, God said one woman. We believe in the standard and the principles of life, and it is written in our manual for living called the Bible. And we will not bow to the gods of this world. I still have one more minute because I'm timing myself.
Yes, yes, I am too.
I believe that righteousness exalts a nation, but sin brings reproach. The Lord God is over Belize, and we are about to be judged if we allow this to pass. No government that agrees to this bill will survive, because the people of Belize, we reject this bill.
When we come back, the new president of Guatemala wants to meet with the government and civil aviation to acquire a radar which can detect those suspected drug planes. A new government took over in Guatemala this week. The president is conservative Alejandro Giammattei, and while not much was heard from him in respect of the territorial claim during the campaign, on Thursday he spoke on the matter. Now, Guatemala is to make submissions this year in the International Court of Justice, and it has named a judge. In an interview, Giammattei tells the media that he wants to meet with the government either in Belmopan or at the adjacency zone.
Hablamos sobre algo muy interesante. Le pedimos que facilitara una reunión con el gobierno beliceño y estamos proponiendo que sea de este domingo en 8, en donde nos permitan ir acompañados de la OEA a hablar con el gobierno de Belice, ya sea en Belmopan o en la zona de adyacencia, para que podamos, dejando por un lado el tema de la Corte, principiando a restablecer los vínculos que podamos tener con Belice en temas de comercio, en temas de turismo. O sea, hay muchas cosas que nos unen más que pelear. Entonces lo que queremos es una buena aproximación. Les encantó la idea. El canciller Brolo está girando hoy una nota a la OEA para que nos hagan, ellos sirvan de facilitadores, para que siempre haya un intermediario en estas primeras pláticas. Ya después ya no necesitaremos, sino que nos presenten como nuevo gobierno, ya que nosotros tenemos muchísimo interés de llevarnos bien con todos nuestros vecinos.
In the same interview, Giammattei cut diplomatic ties with the Venezuelan government of President Nicolas Maduro, ordering the closure of its embassy in Caracas. He said, quote, "We have instructed the foreign minister that the only person left in the embassy in Venezuela should return, and that we definitively end relations with the government of Venezuela. We are going to close the embassy," unquote. Battle for control over the Santa Cruz Village expansion project continues in the south. We first reported the issue in January 2019 when a public meeting was held to clarify certain concerns raised by villagers with regards to the project. One of those concerns was that the UDP Stand Creek West standard bearer, Ivan Williams, is attempting to take control of the project. That, according to Chairman Vincent Scott, is still the case, and he wants the Minister of Land, Hugo Pat, to intervene and safeguard the 663 lots that have been surveyed.
We are hearing news of a meeting that Hugo Pat is supposed to come in the village on Sunday. So I am stating to everybody right now from Santa Cruz and the surrounding villages that we will be having a protest on that same day, because we have a lot of land issues in the village and we need to hear something from at least the minister that he could address the problems that we are facing now.
What does Mr. Williams have to do with the project?
I don't know. That's what I want to know, and we are trying to get an explanation. I tried from before Christmas to get to the commissioner, and every time I go there, you know, he's not in, he don't have time.
So wouldn't it better for yourself and the council to be part of that meeting this Sunday rather than protesting in order to get explanations and answers that you're seeking?
Yeah, well, that's why we are doing this today and try to get a response back to see if it is something that we could sit down and talk about. And now he wants to come in and take over the project. And then I am saying that Santa Cruz will not lay down. We will not back down. We will get up and fight for our project, no?
The Santa Cruz Village Council is also facing another threat. According to Chairman Vincent Scott, more than 30 farmers have been cultivating land at the rear of the village for some 11 years. And now there are moves by a company to purchase 2,000 acres of land, including the land of the farmers. He's calling on the relevant authorities to consult with the Village Council and consider the needs of the small farmers.
We get to find out that this person was trying to get the land. First it was a rumor, right? But the land is a land that it starts from Santa Cruz all the way across to, I think, San Roman, nearly close to Georgetown, no? So when I heard it was just a rumor. I said, you know, I don't believe the rumor or anything. But now we're finding out that there's some truth to this, no? So we are trying to get an explanation also about that, because the farmers in the area, you know, that's the land that they use to care for their kids and their families. They've been planting crops there. So what I told them is to everybody do their declaration, get some pictures of the crops that you're planting, and then I could come to the media and then share this, no?
You definitely know that someone has applied for that particular land?
I could tell you today that it's already at the lease process.
Coming up after the break, a social media icon has a positive message for apprentices. Last year, we were there when a group of Belize City youths completed an apprenticeship program. Today, we were at Youth for the Future Drive when they happily received their certificates. The occasion was energized with the participation of Daniel Loveless from What You Know, as well as a former graduate of the program, Akeem Gill, who is now earning his living in the cruise tourism industry. Both had inspiring messages. Here is News 5's Dwayne Moody with this report.
Last December, after a decade of working along with the Belize City youth, the apprenticeship program graduated another 60 men and women after having met all the requirements and excelling during the 6-month course. But their certificates were missing a signature, and it wasn't until today that the signed documents were handed over to the apprentices. Today, there was a treat because What You Know's Daniel Loveless from the Caribbean Show was present for the event.
Today, because Daniel is in our country, I worked it around his visit so that he can do us the honor and give them their certificate. This is a youth apprenticeship program, and so him being the person who he is, who better than to have them laugh and enjoy a moment of just gratitude for life.
I just want to encourage them to not to give up on their dreams. Believe that anything is possible. Anything you put your mind to, as long as your mind could conceive and believe, then oh boy, you definitely could achieve it. So I just want to encourage them to to not to give up and to keep pushing to achieve whatever goals or vision they have.
Also present for today's event was another graduate of the apprenticeship program, Akeem Gill. For some years now, has been working in the cruise ship industry. He's back home on vacation and shared some inspiring words with the apprentices.
We want to inspire them to understand that all those individuals were where they started. And so these individuals must motivate them to understand that they can also reach their level of greatness. A ladder, it's step by step in order to reach the top. There's no easy way out of it. And so when we bring back these past apprentices, it's just to inspire them and motivate them. How did you get to where you are? That's the question, and the response is what they take back with them in order to persevere and become their greater self.
One of the messages that resounded was that sometimes the support that a young person needs cannot necessarily be found at home.
They want to remain in the program, but they lack the necessary resources to keep them in the program. Again, we go to the extent of speaking to their partners, because there are some of them who their partners have always had them home. So now that they are out there, now that they are aspiring, it's an issue. They see it as competition. So how do you get them to understand that this is a partnership? 2 checks coming into the house can only make things better. And so there's a lack of mentorship among our people to understand their journey. As a family, it doesn't matter who it is, a cousin, a friend, aunt, uncle, whosoever, you've got to come together to nurture someone who is trying to climb that ladder of greatness. You have to do that. You understand? If you don't do that, they feel obligated to go outside of their comfort zone. And oftentimes, outside is where the danger happens.
If you don't know, now you know.
Dwayne Moody for News 5.
The popular YouTube show What You Know will feature Belize in one of its upcoming episodes as the 21-year-old founder embarks on a tour to promote education through an entertainment show outside of the region. The social media icon travels around the world seeking answers to a variety of questions. Daniel Loveless has been in Belize for a few days now, where he will be checking in to see just how much Belizeans know. When News 5 caught up with Loveless at an event today, we asked about how the experience has been so far.
It has been amazing. People are being really receptive to the questions. People are seeing me in the streets, you know. It's all love, you know, and it's all, you know, put out positive energy out there and I receive back positive energy. So it's all positive, it's all good, and I'm enjoying it. Yeah. It wasn't challenging at all because I always had that charismatic personality dealing with people. So, you know, it was an easy road, but I just had my obstacles there, you know. And I'm here today. I'm grateful, you know, for the success, grateful for the people, you know, grateful for the assistance from people, grateful for the love, support from everybody from all these countries. You know, I'm grateful. It has been a fun, it has been a long, hard road, but it has been fun and it has been worth it, you know, and I enjoy it, yeah.
So what's next for you?
What's next, you know, I'm trying to take what, you know, to as much countries as possible to expand the audience, to get more people familiar with the show. You know, I'm in the process of learning Mandarin Chinese right now because I want to take it to China as well. I'm in the process of, you know, tightening up on my Spanish right now to, you know, take it to, I just want to take it every single place in the world, and I want them to know what you know. So if they didn't know, I mightn't know, they may know something, but if you didn't know, well, now you know, you know.
Earlier this week, a meeting was held to present the findings of the agri-tourism study of Ambergris Ski. The 12-month study looked at agricultural produce that is consumed by the tourism sector. Now, for the first time in 2019, the tourism industry met its goals in exceeding 500,000 overnight guests, and so the consumption patterns were looked at in terms of the demands on infrastructure as well as supplies and raw materials. The study was conducted under a partnership between the Ministries of Agriculture and Tourism. Several areas were studied. The data collected between September 2018 and August 2019 were shared.
We looked at the consumptive patterns over the entire year to determine things like production numbers, sales value, seasonality, and then use that data to present to the folks in the room today with hopes that we can improve our production, that we can tie the production in with the seasonal demand for the tourism sector as well as the local market. And we can look at providing more local goods within the tourism sector.
The Business Development Unit at the Ministry of Tourism conducted a tourism consumption study for the period September 2018 to August 2019 to quantify the demand for the accommodation sector and the restaurant sector for our top 12 agricultural products. So we found that we were not able to produce as much, so we needed to import a large sum of these items in order to meet the demand for the tourism market. Now, the focus of the study lets us see where we are or where weaknesses are as it relates to both sector, the agriculture and the tourism sector, and the need to collaborate and work together to meet the needs of this industry and also to prevent leakages by producing more of the items needed to meet the need or meet the demand of the sector.
And that's the news. Don't forget that tonight's broadcast is available in both text and streaming video at channel5belize.com. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/News5Live. I'm Marlene Cuellar. Thanks for joining us. And from all of us here at News 5, have a happy and safe weekend. Good night.